Okay, 1 minute deck tech starting now. Niv to light using, well, no bring to light, so we're bubbling out a few more Supremes. We're running removal with Vanishing Verse, Tyrant Scorn, Rampage, Sack, basically tons of spells here that we're hoping to leverage with our Supreme. No Kiki Jiki, so this is not the optimal list. Please keep that in mind, don't forge it. Obviously we're running spells removal. We got Kaito, our boy, and Edgar Groom. We're running our Cram Session package with Environmental Science, Reduced Memory, Basic Conjuring, Containment Breeze, Pest Summoning, Mascot Things. We're running Graveyard Hate with Scrabble Claws and Vetoes for Control Hates, and Teaching of the Arcanes for Card Draw. Apart from that, we're running the new Cosmic Rebirth to buy back things like our Wandering Mind or our lands that we might discard to the Jumpstart ability. All in all, that is the deck tech. List will be in the description. Please don't forge this unless you're having fun. Alright, we got our first match here with Ekrato. Now we get to play. Keep a dodgy 7 here, but we do have Edgar and Wandering Mind. We're just gotta hope this isn't some kind of control deck or some very fast aggro deck. And red would suggest aggro, but luckily we draw Cram Sessions, so let's immediately Cram Sessions here. Let's grab Pest Summoning just to reinforce Lifelink. One of the other things now with Pest Summoning is, since we're running more Supremes, flashbacking back the Pest Summonings can be really sweet. They seem to be Rakdos in some capacity, so let's drop out a Pest Summoning, just go up the board, because there'll probably be Edict effects, and I want to try and keep Wandering Mind on if I can. They use Rotten Reunion, which I've never seen before, to exile a card into speed, which instantly makes Edgar so much more worse. However, I still pump him out here. My logic is, even if they have to do it, they have to have removal and flash tap back, which takes up their entire turn. They play the life of use them of whatever. So I decide I'll run out a Wandering Mind, grab a Vanishing Verse, Shocking Watery Grave, so Vanishing Verse is ready. The zombie can't block, so we just get in for damage. And our opponent concedes, so I have no idea what this deck is originally. Obviously with hindsight I do, so we just run it back with the existing list we have now. Based on what we saw, I thought this was a brew of Rakdos, so I was prepared to just run it back with what we had. Black-red removal is Edict based, so I was quite happy with what we got in terms of protection. So, alright, now the big reveal. We have a Supreme in hand, 2 Cram Sessions and lands, so let's see where we go from here. Try on to start. Turn 2 Cram Sessions, since they took no action. We might as well get the Environmental Studies, just get more lands out of our deck. We want to get up to this Supreme if we can. Opponent drops a Fable, so this reinforces that it could be the traditional Rakdos. So I'm going to keep up interaction here, because I'm thinking they might drop a Shieldred, and I'd like to Assassin's Trophy that on their turn. But they surprised me with a Transmogrify, so this is... Fortunately we have Tyrant Scorn here, which can answer that and fizzle that. This is a Transmogrify deck trying to cheat out Atraxa. Problem with this build of the deck is they are pretty much all in on the Atraxa to win the game, which is pretty bad against us because everything in our hand and our deck is removal, bounce, or just deal with an Atraxa. They play Mutavault and they have a Reflections of Kiki-Jiki on board. They have an Indomitable Creativity, so we'll get rid of that. And I think to myself, I'm surely going to be able to just tap out now for a Niv Supreme because they've had a Transmogrify and a Creativity. There's no way they have a third spell in their hand that they could Transmogrify the Mutavault. So I put out a Niv Supreme. My opponent plays it land tapped, animates the Mutavault, and never didn't have it. There's the third Transmogrify effect. That opens the Atraxa. As you can see here, with the exception of the Liliana, everything is just built around getting this Atraxa out. So we'll just shock in a land here. I'm going to choose how to deal with the Atraxa here. So, the being Rakdos, I'm worried about potential reanimation, so I decided to use Tyrant Scorn here. to bounce it up. And we can throw a Cram Session into graveyard so we can flash that back later if we have to. Our opponent here goes for... what do they go for? They could Lily downtick, or they could Mirror Breaker Transmogrify. They use Rotten Reunion to exile our Tyrant Scorn here. And they go for a Transmogrify. We have the Assassin's Trophy, so we'll just take care of that. Now our opponents, if they get a black here, could drop the Liliana, but they grab a red, which is very strange to me. They could drop the Liliana and edict away our Niv Mizzet here. I use the Supreme to take out the Fable here, which is probably a mistake, because I could always just Cram Session for Containment Breach. So consider my options here. I choose to Cram Session, throwing away... well, no I don't. Wait, what do I do? Hit him with the Supreme, put him down to 8. I've got to go up the board for the Edict effects here. So I choose to charge the second Niv Mizzet, grab ourselves a Pest Summoning, cast a Pest Summoning, and pass back. I'm not going to double block here, I'm going to let them go. They only have black red mana, so in order to get Atraxa on the field manually, they need 3 treasures from the Kiki-Jiki. They start using their removal here to try and thin out our deck. They activate their Mutavault and just go in on an aggro attack. I'm not going to take the bait and block here because we need Edict fodder. They activate Lily and they plus up, which is bad for us because now we can't jumpstart. We draw Supreme Verdict, which is pointless in this matchup here. So I choose to attack here. Fortunately, I have to kill this Liliana because they could just down tick, have another removal spell, and we'll just be dead. I choose to put Yorion into hand so we have more jumpstart fuel here. I want to hold up the Assassin's Trophy for the Transmogrify effects, but also have, you know, fodder in case they have another discard spell. Opponent goes into the tank to think here for a little bit. Go to combat, hits us down. Zombie's decayed, so it's going to sacrifice now. They have 2 treasures, they're 1 away from hard casting and Atraxa if they have it in their hand. I play the land, which is probably a mistake. But I choose to go in here. They animate the Mutavault and block the Pest. Hindsight, that was a bit stupid to throw in that. I was just excited, thought we could get him closer to dead. So now I've got a flashback Pest Summoning to just have more effects that could protect against Edicts here. And I can then still hold up the Assassin's Trophy in case something crazy happens. Opponent is on 2 life and none of their animated lands can block Niv. They use Volcanic Spike here. Put a card and draw a new one, we gain another life. Opponent goes to combat, swings with the Goblin Shaman. Again, we are not going to throw the Pest under the bus because it's Edict effect, Edict fodder. They hard cast an Atraxa from their hand. With the mana they have here, they could grab both the Fatal Push and the Liliana and cast them to stabilize on this board. However, something's interesting. They choose the Rending Volley, not realizing it doesn't do 4 damage to green creatures. So now they just play the Liliana here, down tick on us, so we have to sack the Pest. Now if they took the Fatal Push instead, they could have Fatal Pushed the Pest, then Liliana'd to force us to sack Niv Mizzet, and we would be in a much worse position at this point. They play the land for turn. I'm going to Assassin's Trophy the Atraxa in the end step here, because I'm pretty sure they don't have any multicolored removal that could kill Niv. In hindsight, they could have had a Sheoldred's Edict, but unfortunately they don't. They fail to find a land and they concede because they're dead. Pretty solid match there. Second one, we have Telly Scrubby. This hand has solid removal interaction, so we're going to keep it. Opponent's mulling. They have some very nice sleeves. Obviously a secret layer I don't know about. I only bought the Street Fighter one. They play a Skrell Defectomite, so I'm going to pass here and see what they do afterwards. Play land to play a Kemba. So Vanishing versus Skrelv, because this is clearly the Hammer Time deck. And the key to fighting any Hammer Time deck is everything on your board must die always and never be left alone. They play the Sword of Once and Future. We pass. Missed our land drop, which is unfortunate. They play a Nahiri. They can now reanimate, so they play Kafori Scamp. They reanimate the Kemba here, and that gets them to attach the Sword of Future. So I'm going to Leyline Binding, remove the sword. I'm going to remove the sword because Kemba's going to exile anyway, and I just want to mess around with slowing this down. On passes, they got one card in hand, they go for Resolute Strike. I'm going to Assassin's Trophy the Nahiri, so there's no extra things going on here. They find their land, we take 5, go down to 11. Pass back. Pay 2 life, and we drop the Niv Mizzet Supreme. It has hexproof and monocolored. They draw their card and concede. So, Hammer Time. Not much in our sideboard for this matchup, honestly. We could bring in Scrabbling Claws, but I decided to just run it back. We had a pretty solid show, so we'll just keep it going that way. Match 2, we have a relatively good hand here. They drop a Sigarda's Aid, which is terrible for us. Because they could have, they have Fireblade charging into Colossus Hammer, so they literally have the nuts, and we get hit for 11 on turn 2. I Assassin's Trophy here, and I have to take out the Colossal Hammer, because if I take out the Fire Charger, I will just die to the trigger on it, Death Trigger. They play a Skrelv. We struggle here, so we Growth Spiral, draw a card, drop both our Fable Passages, because now they'll come into play untapped. But it also means Skrelv's going to be active here, because I have to assume they could draw another spell that's going to be a problem for us. They grit a Nahiri, which puts us in a terrible position, because now they can get the Colossus Hammer back, put it on the Fireblade Charger. And so we're going to tap down and think. So, spoiler alert, we lose this game because we don't get to stabilize and they have protection. But I want you to keep this game in mind, bearing in mind what happens in game 3. And it's going to be my little rant here before we get to it. If you're playing a Glass Cannon deck, you have no right to Salt Rope when your Glass Cannon shatters. Because that's basically what happens. Spoiler alert, I know, but I wanted to get this rant in before the 3rd game. So we shock down, go for a Wandering Mind here. We get the Clarion, which is kind of the worst white we could have got, because it has... Basically, our opponent just has protection from whatever we do. The Resolute Strike, putting him up to 3, activate the Mutavault here. They discard and draw a card. I didn't realize that Nahiri just lets you straight up draw if you have an empty hand. So I Vanishing Verse, or try to Vanishing Verse the Fire Charger, so I can just deal with this here. But I ultimately realize here that even if I Clarion here, our opponent will just be able to reanimate with Nahiri and kill us, so I just shock myself to death. Right, now the infamous game 3. This is why I think Wizards needs to incorporate the ban system they have on MTGO, where you can blacklist players you don't want to play again. Right, we have an Angrass Rampage into a Kaito. It's not the greatest, but we do have all our colours covered here. They play a Fireblade Charger, so we'll just shock this in and immediately force them to sack it. We got to take a damage, but that's fine. Opponent on their turn 2 plays a Kemba. Find a Cram Session, so we'll cast that, and we'll grab the Containment Breach, which can destroy an artifact or enchantment, and if that card has 3 or less, we make a pest. We're going to use Fable Passage here. And I'm going to use Kaito, the Dancing Shadow. Because Kaito's ability here, we make a drone, and next turn if we get to untap with him, we can lock creatures down so they can't attack. Drop a Sigarda's Aid, drop a Fighter's Class, and grab the Sword of Once and Tomorrow, which is weird, in my opinion. So first things first, I'm going to containment breach the Sagada's aid so they can't flash any sneaky weapons in on us. We're going to start with Kaito here and plus on the Kemba, so it can't attack or block till my next turn. I'm going to hold both our creatures back here on block because they're good deterrents. And this is where the opponent starts the roping. Which is, you know, insane, because if they have a land in hand, they could... Well, they didn't obviously draw a land, because I think they're hoping to drop the Sword of Once and Tomorrow to try and... I don't know. Try and block. Well, yeah, if they drop the Sword of Once and Tomorrow onto a creature, then we can't use Kaito to block it down. I mean, it might just be salt roping because we're using Lessons suboptimal power cards and they've lost to it. Right, they pass, so in the instant we're just going to fetch, grab any land, doesn't matter. And the beauty of this is that our opponent now is still roping, so I'm going to just prepare the Salty Oko Sprinkle, just so we're ready for when it inevitably happens. It's the only emote I use, and that's when they time out. I will just give them a sprinkle of the Salty Oko. I'm going to attack here with, not both of them, I want to attack with the drone, because it trades with the Mutavault if they animate it, and I know they're struggling with lands. But that gives us another activation to deploy another drone. It gets us above 20, which is always good. But our opponent just sits there. And this is my big issue with this. You're playing a Glass Cannon deck. You had an amazing game 2 where your deck performed optimally to a turn 3 win. And you get salty because game 3 you don't get an amazing hand. It's the variance of Magic. It's got to happen. Apologies as well if I'm sounding a bit bunged up, but my allergies are in full effect. And we give him a sprinkle of Oko and pass it along. Final game here now. This game was kind of hilarious. So it's blue-black rogues. And there's a reason they took the Niv Supreme here, because our opponent is going to try to mill us. So we'll Tyrant Scorn and get rid of that. We will Cram Sessions. I'm going to grab a basic Conjuration here to try and dig for a creature, hopefully a Wandering Mind or a Niv. Well, basic Conjuration, they consider what they're doing. I choose a Niv Mizzet Reborn here, see if I can resolve it. On our end step, our opponent uses a Cling to Dust. We're kind of the worst enemy of rogues and mill here because we are an 80 card Yorion deck. And we are running a card which actively loves our graveyard to be full. So we get a ton of spells here. Our opponent just ticks up on the Niv. We pass. We're shocking a land here. Go to combat. Attack the Jace. They Brazen Borrower. Bounce our land back. Bounce our Niv back, sorry. I consider what I want to do here, so I'm going to first Vanishing Verse the Jace if I can. They do have the Drown in the lock. So I'm going to Growth Spiral, draw, put a land into play, just let them uptick, see what they're doing here. They -2 to mill us free, and they play a Kaito Shizuki. Right, this is more amped for us now though, because now we can use the Colligan's Command to force them to discard cards. They don't counter it, so I'm assuming they don't have much more else to do. I consider my options here. I don't want to redeploy Niv because I still have a full hand. I know I could get Fort Seized, but I'm going to keep the hand under control using our interaction spells. They play a Kaito, and I wait till they activate it. I could have done it I suppose, in terms of changing, but I want to see what they do. Right, we try to play Edgar here, which we do, which is pretty good. They flash in a Thief Guild's Enforcer. I'm going to flash in a Vanishing Verse, see what they've got. They flash in a Brazen Borrower. mills us for 3 more cards, attack us for 3, putting us down to 18. I'm going to go to my turn here and attack with an Edgar. They have another Brazen Borrower that they bounce back to our hand. I consider that now they've got 1 card in hand, I'm going to just redeploy Niv. We grab a few good cards here. I'm going to force them to sack here. See if they've got another counterspell. They lose their last card. They're clinging to dust here, trying to figure out what to take. They're kind of in a bad position though, because they want to take a card to draw a card. They have to take a non-creature card, so they're trying to basically stabilize while also not exiling our creatures, which we can always get back later. I choose to fire out a Wandering Mind here, see what we find. In response, they Fatal Push it because they lost their card last turn. I pick up another Leyline Binding here in case they have anything else. They flash in a Soaring Fort Thief, so we'll just Leyline Binding this immediately. They're still on 18 because we haven't got through yet. Opponent just passes. On our end step, we're going to just use a Growth Spiral. We find another Leyline Binding, which is perfect to deal with anything in the board. We hit them down to 12 in their end step. In my end step, sorry, they cling to dust. They now have no graveyard, so they can't flash that back. They flash in a Nighthawk Scavenger. We Leyline Binding to remove it from the game. So Rogues, we bring in all of our control pieces. We take out Kaito, it's a bit too slow grindy. We take out the Scribble Cores in the end because controlling our graveyard is not going to be important as controlling their graveyard. Sorry, controlling their graveyard is not as important as controlling our graveyard. And we see where we end up. Alright, we keep all lands because I was thinking a turn 1 Forties would be funny. Thieves Guild mills 2 more lands. Yeah, we were not drawing anything impactful for a while. Gonna drop in a Wandering Mind here. Try to bait the counterspell. Our opponent just passes back, drops in a Nighthawk Scavenger, building their board presence. I choose to try for the Clarion here. They could have a Spell Pierce, but I haven't seen one yet, so it's test the water. We find an Niv-Mizzet Supreme here that I really want to resolve, so considering my options, I think I've just got to end checks, counterspell check with a Growth Spiral. They flash in a Soaring Fort Thief. They're holding up 2 mana, which makes me think Drown in the Loch. But we've got to make sure. Alright, opponent hits us in. We Growth Spiral end step. They don't appear to have anything. I'm considering using Vanishing Verse for a second here until I realise that Fort Thief is 2 colours. Again, I'm just hesitant, so I just go for it here with the Niv-Mizzet Supreme. They do have the Mystical Dispute. They mill us for a few more cards. We pass back. We are finding all of the lands here. We're just going to Raffine's Tower now to see what we get. Find an Assassin's Trophy. They flash in a Brazen Borrower here, so that's Assassin's Trophy, the Searing Fort Thief for a counter check. They don't do anything, so I think that'd be one they'd want to save. So let's Vanishing versus the Brazen Borrower while their defenses are down. And they cling to dust, so they're going to start drawing cards that way. Well, we shock in a land, bring Yorion to hand here. They flash in a Thief Guild Enforcer. We Tyrant Scorn, but they have a Drown in the Loch here, so they're out of cards. They hit us down to 8, they play a land. We draw Wandering Mind with Yorion in hand, this is amazing, so we Wandering Mind. They're going to cling to dust here to try and draw a card. They have no more graveyards, so they can't get anything. I'm going to choose the Vanishing Verse, and then we're going to flash in Yorion, blink the Wandering Mind, get a Cram Session. Our opponent top decks a Jace, the Perfected Mind, which is terrible because they can now draw 3. They go to the Feet of Forces and Guild here and attack. In hindsight, I should have responded to that with the Vanishing Verse to kill Jace before they draw, but that's my bad. Opponent draws 3 and passes. They Sheldrick's Edict to get rid of our creature and play Mercurial Spelldancer. They're tapped out, so we get Cosmic Rebirth here, and I choose to grab the Supreme because that happens. And thanks to them milling us the entire game, our hand is stocked. We can't block the Spelldancer, so it goes down. We draw a card here, and I'm going to choose to keep up as much interaction as possible. So start with the spell to make him sack a creature. Flash in a Soaring Fort Thief, which is quite good for us because it means they probably don't have counter magic. But again, I want to keep as much options open as possible, so we're going to learn, grab the Pest Summoning. Excuse me. So we're back up to 11. Our opponent attacks. They've got no oil counters on it yet, so we're pretty good. With multiple lands here, so what I choose to do is I'm going to bring, attempt to bring the Wandering Mind back to the field. Opponent responds with a change the equation. It counters our spell, so now I'm going to just use the Deafening Clarion here. Fortunately, our shields are down, so we could be dead to an Edict effect here. But aside from that one Sheldrick effect, we haven't seen anything yet. Our opponent exiles a single card here, which isn't really going to stop us because this has been pretty insane. We hit them down to 18. My guess is they have a handful of monocolored removal. They draw another Cling to Dust to try and draw out of it. Play a Night Scavenger Hawk. We just draw lands here. We get 2 cards in hand. Niv's going to stabilize us here. We finally find the vetoes we put in. This is at times 3 speed. Excuse the cough as well. Reload. We're going to Tyrant Scorn here, discard an Edgar. Our opponent's going to Mystical Dispute this. I'm going to choose not to bother countering it. Instead, I'm just going to crack this, grab a forest, use the Assassin's Trophies here in their end step to, well, in response to their attack, to try and deal with this. They fail to find, which is interesting for me, so I could start strip mining them now. But instead, I've got Lethal on board with 2 attacks here. So with veto and an extra card in hand, I have 2 counters for whatever spells they try to activate here, and we draw another veto. So this is pretty much over here, provided we can get through here. Opponent tries to Brazen Borrower, we will veto that and swing in for lethal. Yep, and that was the games. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.